So one of the, I think 4 or 5 steps becomes about self-awareness and self-acceptance. They're kind of back to back. Self-awareness and self-acceptance, where you just naturally want to be the most beautiful that you can be.
Yeah.
Just as you are, but the most beautiful version of the way you are. Not trying to put kind of beauty as like a benchmark or anything, but beautiful is a very, in a general term, that could mean a lot of different things, right? Doesn't mean that Victoria's Secret beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with doing any of that. There's nothing wrong to being super, fit, super everything. I'm all for it because part
absolutely.
of the, so
but when it's for yourself.
Yeah.
When you're
so one of the lessons of the 12 laws is that it is not a doctrine. We're not telling you what to do. We're certainly not judging you whatsoever. It's just a process that, because it's not even about me, and certainly not about Christina, right? It's not about anybody. It's not about some book you read. It's all about internally. You have to come to a place where you want to constantly move forward spiritually. And you can't do this if you're trying to be somebody else. And it's perfectly natural. You're going to go, everybody goes through that phase. Even people who are eventually will become, self-realized. It is the part of the process of a child soul becoming adult soul. And this doesn't happen in mere years, right? So it's everything you do is, it's as long as, it's perfectly fine. As long as it's, if it's personally affecting me, obviously, that's a different story. But so that part, I think some people some people who are watching this or hearing this may think, wait a minute, but if I do that, are these guys, are Shiva and Christina going to judge me because like at night at 2 a.m. and nobody's watching, I'm doing that? No, because really,
you're on your own journey. You're the only one seeing through your eyes, like thinking with your mind, and this is your body, this is your soul's journey, right?
Exactly right.
But there comes a point where you ask yourself, what more? And then there comes a point when you continue to shed away certain elements of attachment that have been, and that's what you're saying within these steps and these laws that are there. What do you think is one of the most challenging laws? Like, if we look at it as like steps.
Yeah, I would have to be self-love.
The self-love?
Yeah, because that is the one, on this planet, that's toughest because everything is stacked against you. Because you may, a lot of people do jobs they hate and that reflects on how they feel about themselves, or they may not, like certain things about their physicality that reflects, on themselves. They may be in situations where they're not being supported by people who are around them, and that reflects. It's a very, very tough law. That's why it's, I think it's 10. It is really right up there, and all the work is, you kind of, when you get to self-love, then the roller coaster becomes, a lot easier, because you've understood, you've got what the Matrix is about. You really understood all that, and now it's your time. Now you can really shine, and you can just speed up your progress. It's very difficult. It's very difficult when you're, for somebody who, anyways, I already mentioned it, but abusive relationships, all of that affect how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
Really, relationships especially, right? Especially if you feel strongly about someone and you're together and you get rejected.
Yeah.
It makes you feel. So these are all, very real emotional things that affect how people are. That's why the process is very difficult.
Yeah, and if they grew up in a family that maybe didn't give them as much of that love and support as their little infant running around, their needs maybe weren't met completely and fully. And so then there's some healing process that needs to be done around that, right?
Well, you just tapped into something really, really big. I call that childhood programming. Childhood programming is the biggest hindrance to spiritual growth. The biggest.
Wow.
Half of Hitchcock movies, who in my opinion is the greatest film director of our time, I call him the Buddha of cinema, right? Because he worked from the silent era to 1970s, nonstop. Half of his movies are about mother issues. The famous Psycho is the ultimate mother issue of all time, you know? So, but even in The Birds, both the male lead and the female lead have mother issues. The female lead, as soon as the male lead says, "So tell me about your mother," she jumps back like 3 feet and yells, "My mother!" Well, and then she's like, that is perfect explanation of childhood programming.
Yeah.
Childhood programming is probably going to be, I think that is related to self-love because they're both in a very, very close together. You need to be able to get out of your childhood programming. Unfortunately, if you're listening to this, usually the upper levels of the laws are not gonna be in your range if you haven't tapped into your childhood program, haven't accepted. You don't have to forgive. It's not about just forgiving. It's kind of understanding the process and moving on.
Yeah.
And using whatever that may have been as a tool. So
as a
that
tool
note becomes
and appreciation, right? Because we live in a world of duality, and so if for every negative there was some positive, there was some strong suit or different type of learning that, or even just an aspect of you, you wouldn't have become the same person if you didn't go through whatever you went through.
Right.
And so that's the self-acceptance, right? And part of self-acceptance, you have to accept who your parents were perfect for you, or the needs that weren't fulfilled were perfect because they gave you these other strengths, or whatever that is.
Yeah, they were perfect for the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't believe if negativity is ever perfect, but yes, they're perfect for the time. But yeah, so this childhood programming is really big. The reason I said it's not about forgiveness because I use a term I called emotional ammunition. So your process of liberation cannot happen without experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just la-di-da yourself through life and be liberated. Not going to happen. So the experience that you have is going to give you that. So that's what really you mean is that even though it may have been negative, but it gave you that. You
need some form of friction in order to move forward. You know,
friction. That is exactly the right word. Yeah, you can't. It is not possible. Actually, growth is not possible without friction.